The darkness beyond Pluto rippled as the first Zulkar dreadnoughts emerged, black silhouettes against the stars. Shaped like jagged serpents and bristling with plasma arrays, they moved silently, confidently. No warning, no diplomacy. They had come to consume. On board the human fleet's flagship Helix Fury, Commander Jalen Ryder stood motionless. His jaw was locked tight, his fingers curled against the railing. "They're not scanning," his second-in-command whispered. "They're just watching." "Like wolves," Jalen muttered. The Zulkar were known only through fragmented data, whispers from destroyed colonies at the edge of mapped space. Over 8 feet tall, armored with chitin-like scales, their language was untranslatable, their ships unmatched. Every species that had faced them disappeared. To Earth Command, they were myth. To Jalen, they were prophecy. Across the void, Zira Talek stood at the prow of the Shivsa, her black eyes narrowing. She observed the humans with calculated boredom. Primitive engines, scattered formation, inefficient heat signatures. Her voice dripped disdain. Her second barked, "Why wait? We should burn them." Zira waved him silent. "They fear. That's more valuable than death." But that night, she listened to a strange human frequency, music. The first notes of a mournful violin played through intercepted data. It made her pause, made her curious. Jalen stared at his console long after the transmission ended. The Zulkar hadn't attacked. They just hovered. He hated this silence. Silence meant the storm was coming. He returned to his cabin, poured himself a drink he didn't taste, and stared at the ceiling. A song drifted from the comms room again. Someone was playing classical music through the broadcast lines, hoping maybe the aliens would hear it. The next morning, Luna Base was gone. A single beam from the flagship reduced it to cinders. Earth Command panicked. Jalen didn't. Helix Fury launched under his control, maneuvering through debris clouds and magnetic storms. He spoke only when necessary. "We strike the flank, not the center. Bait the tendrils. Burn them when they split." His strategy worked, briefly, but the Zulkar adapted. Within hours, 4 ships were vaporized. Helix Fury barely limped away, engines smoking. Amid the chaos, Jalen saw something odd. One of the Zulkar escape pods was drifting off course, not destroyed, not attacking. "Tractor it in," he ordered. Inside was a tall female Zulkar warrior, black-armored, bleeding blue from a cracked cheekbone. When she opened her eyes, her lips curled, not in pain but amusement. "Hello, Predator," she hissed in perfect English. "I surrender." The alien lay still on the medbay table. Thick restraints crossed over her chest and limbs. Her armor, dented and cracked, had been partially removed to access her wounds. Beneath it, her dark blue skin shimmered faintly in the low light, like wet obsidian. Jalen Ryder stood just outside the quarantine glass, watching the creature who had surrendered, with a calm that was almost theatrical. "She's the one who let us pull her in," Lieutenant Kieran muttered. "Nobody gets caught like that unless they want to." Jalen nodded. "Open the door." "Commander." "I said open it." As the door hissed open, Jalen stepped inside. The air felt heavier, like the room itself recognized danger. The Zulkar, female, turned her head toward him slowly, her long white hair falling across her shoulder. She blinked once, languid, confident. Not a prisoner. A queen temporarily paused. "I expected interrogation," she said, her voice smooth, almost amused. "Not admiration." "What's your name?" Jalen asked, standing tall. "Zira Talak, warrior caste, bloodline of Vran." He didn't know what that meant, and he didn't care. "Why did you let us capture you?" Zira smiled, revealing a hint of serrated teeth. "Curiosity. About humans. About you." Jalen didn't flinch. "We're not interesting, just angry." "Anger is the beginning of many interesting things," she said, eyes raking over his form, slowly, deliberately. "I've seen your records. Battle simulations, evasive tactics. Humans are messy, undisciplined but clever. Clever enough to kill your kind, he said flatly. Zyra's eyes narrowed, but the smile never faded. We'll see. That night, Jalen couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her eyes, those ink-black depths shimmering with something between challenge and intrigue. He'd seen aliens before, even fought them, but nothing like her. She wasn't just another enemy. She was watching him like she already knew the shape of his soul. The next morning, Zyra was released from medical restraints and held under armed watch in the brig. Jalen broke protocol again. No guards, just him. You're not here for peace, he said, sitting across from her. No, but I am here for change. She leaned forward slowly, her fingers brushing the cold table. You know what your people don't understand. Dominance is not power. Survival is. He stared at her, then said, You think you're better than us? No, she whispered. I think you're dangerous. And beautiful. For a long moment, the air crackled. Jalen felt it. Not just lust, not just suspicion, but something ancient, primal. He couldn't tell if he wanted to kill her or touch her. Maybe both. Why are you really here? He asked again. Zyra didn't answer with words. Instead, she stood and slowly pulled open her loose tunic, revealing an intricate map of scars and tattoos across her chest and sides, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Her body was built like a weapon, graceful, muscular, unapologetically feminine. But it was the eyes, still locked on his, that burned the hottest. Because I want to see if the fire in you is real, she said. Against every rule, he kissed her. At first it was rough, like clashing swords. Her lips were cold, but they parted hungrily. Her hands moved to his back, fingers digging into the fabric of his uniform, pulling him closer. Heat surged through him. When she pressed her body against his, the sensation was electric. Her skin, buzzing with something not quite human. Her breath sharp and fast against his neck. She bit him, just lightly. But enough. He didn't stop her. They didn't speak as they collapsed into the makeshift cot in the brig. It wasn't tender. It was war, passion, challenge. Jalen touched her like he was claiming her. Zyra held him like she was consuming him. And somewhere in that heat, something shifted. After, she lay curled against him, her long hair tangled with his. Her fingers traced lazy patterns across his chest. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, he said honestly. Zyra looked up at him. Your leaders will not trust me. They will think you are compromised. He nodded. Are you? She asked with a dangerous smile. Jalen stared at the ceiling. Maybe. Outside the brig, Lieutenant Kieran was already forwarding a report to Central Command. The monitors had caught everything. By the next morning, an order came in. Transfer. Subject Zyra Talek to secure off-planet detention. Immediate. No exceptions. Jalen stared at the words. If he obeyed, she was gone. If he refused, he was a traitor. The intercom buzzed. Zyra's voice, calm and measured, said, They're coming. For me, aren't they? Yeah, he replied quietly. Then run, human, because if they take me, the fire ends here. The ship trembled with the low hum of jump engines coming online. Jalen stood at the helm of the Helix Fury, his jaw clenched tight. The command order still blinked on the screen behind him. Zyra Talek, remove immediately, by force if necessary. His hand hovered over the navigation panel. He knew what this meant. His ship would become a rogue vessel. He'd be court-martialed. They might shoot him down. But Jalen didn't flinch. Zyra was worth it. Not just because she had intelligence that could save humanity. Not just because she offered tactical advantages. But because when he was with her, he felt something rare. Something feral and true. Not peace. Not safety. But clarity. In the brig, Zyra sat calm and still. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the twin lines of luminescent tattoos down her neck. She wore the same cold smirk when Jalen entered. Are we running? She asked. Yes. She rose to her feet with that graceful, predatory movement that always made his pulse spike. She walked right up to him, pressed her body against his, her voice a whisper against his lips. Then let them chase us. When the Helix Fury broke formation and vanished into a wormhole field beyond Saturn's orbit, Earth Command went silent. They weren't prepared to lose Jalen Ryder. He was their hammer. But Jalen wasn't interested in hammers anymore. He wanted fire. On board the ship, chaos ruled. Half the crew remained loyal. The other half demanded answers. Some called him a hero, others a traitor. But Jalen made one thing clear. Syra was staying, and anyone who stood in her way was going out the airlock. In the silence of deep space, Zira revealed more than tactics. She spoke of Zulkar politics, how cracks were forming within their ranks. Not every warrior wanted endless war. Some wanted something else, something closer to what she saw in Jalen. In humans, passion, imperfection, desire. They spent their nights together in stolen moments, bodies tangled, breathless whispers. They didn't pretend it was love. But it was something more dangerous. Need Duck Syra learned his scars by touch. Jalen mapped her curves with reverence. She was a being made for domination. But she gave herself to him in ways that confused her. It wasn't weakness. It was freedom. You, humans, she said one night, laying bare against his chest. You break the rules of everything we believe. Maybe that's why you wanted us dead, he replied. Maybe that's why I want you alive. Days later, Helix Fury found an old communications array hidden in the rings of Uranus. Zira had provided the coordinates. From there they could intercept Zulkar transmissions. What they heard changed everything. The Zulkar fleet was preparing for an extinction-level strike, one designed to wipe out all remaining resistance on Earth. A solar bomb built to fracture the planetary crust, and it was already en route. Earth had no idea. Syra paced the chamber, her sharp claws clicking lightly on the floor. They will destroy everything, not just your cities, your oceans, your memory. Jalen watched her. How do we stop it? She turned slowly. I have a sister, high strategist. She commands the weapon. If I could speak to her, there's a chance. She'll listen to you? He asked. No, Zira said. But I can stall her, make her hesitate. Jalen frowned. And while she hesitates, we strike. The next decision was a line Jalen didn't know he'd cross. He sent a message to Earth Command, not for mercy, not for forgiveness, but for backup. They needed one shot, one precise fleet to take the weapon out while Zyra created the opening. Most in command wanted him dead, but some still believed in him. You'll be exposed, Jalen told her, the night before the jump. Syra shrugged, naked in his bed. So will you. If this goes wrong, I lose everything. You already have, she whispered. But maybe we'll find something new in the fire. He kissed her, slow and deep. Her lips tasted like wild storms and blood and burning promises. He held her like a man who knew this might be the last time. And when she moaned his name, he whispered hers like a prayer, not to a god, but to the one who had stolen his soul. When Helix Fury jumped into proximity of the Zulkar weapon ship, alarm screamed across every frequency. Syra stood at Jalen's side, armored now, her skin gleaming with pale light. She looked like both queen and rebel. Her claws flexed once as the enemy hailed them. Let me speak, she said. Jalen nodded. Her voice flowed through the ship's speakers, in the guttural snarls of the Zulkar tongue. Jalen didn't understand the words, but he watched the face of the enemy commander flicker on screen. Another woman, taller, colder, with the same eyes. Your sister, he muttered. Yes, Zira said softly. They stared at each other through the distance of void and hatred. Then the screen went dark. She's stalling, Zira said, stepping back from the console. Jalen's comms officer shouted, Strike window open, but only for 60 seconds. Jalen didn't hesitate. Fire. Across the black beams of pure energy cut the night. One slammed into the weapon core, A second followed. The Zulkar flagship rippled, shimmered, and exploded in a wave of light, so intense the Helix Fury rocked backwards. Zyra fell into Jalen's arms. The ship went silent, and for a moment, Jalen realized something terrible and beautiful. They had just changed the war. The explosion over Neptune's orbit could be seen from lunar watchposts. The Zulkar War Corps, their planet killer, had been destroyed. It should have been a victory, a triumph. But for Commander Jalen Ryder, it was only the beginning of something darker. Earth Command didn't cheer. They didn't send reinforcements. They sent silence and a warning. If the Helix Fury returned to Earth space, it would be considered hostile. But Jalen didn't care anymore. Because lying in the medbay, breathing shallow and streaked with plasma burns, was Zyra Talek. And she had saved the world. He sat beside her, blood dried across his cheek, holding her hand tightly. Her claws were cold now. Too cold. "Don't you dare," he whispered, brushing hair from her face. "You said you wanted to see if the fire in me was real. You haven't seen the half of it yet." Her eyes fluttered open, barely focused. "It burns," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "and it's yours now." They fled to a derelict shipyard hidden in Mars's shadow, an old scrapyard from a long-dead war. It was barely operational, powered by radiation leaks and spare cores. But it was enough to hide, enough to heal. Zyra's body was different now. Her bioluminescent veins pulsed irregularly. Her blood reacted strangely to human medicine. She shouldn't have survived, but she did, and Jalen didn't leave her side. In the dim light of the medbay, she finally sat up, sweat glistening on her collarbone. Her voice was rough, primal. "What have you done to me?" He touched her hand. "Maybe I gave you something to live for." Zyra stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "I feel wrong." "No," he whispered. "You feel alive." They spent the following days fixing what was left of the Helix Fury. The crew was exhausted, resources were thin, and morale was cracking. But then Zyra stepped onto the bridge, fully healed, half-armored, skin glowing faintly. Her voice rang like thunder through the deck. "You want to survive?" she asked them. "Then stop thinking like humans. Start thinking like something stronger." They listened, because when she spoke, even Jalen stood taller. That night, with silence pressing against the metal walls, Zyra returned to his quarters. She didn't speak, didn't ask. She simply climbed into his bunk and straddled him with slow, calculated control. Her skin was hot now, fevered, her breath shallow, but hungry. "This is not about love," she said. "I know," he replied, already pulling her down to him. Their bodies clashed again, wild and raw, like two creatures born for the battlefield, but built for something more carnal. She moved over him like a queen taking her throne. Every kiss was a challenge, every touch a war cry, and when she screamed his name, it echoed like prophecy. They lay tangled in the aftermath, gasping, drenched in sweat and heat, and something that felt dangerously close to devotion. The first sign of the final assault wasn't the enemy ships, it was the sky. Black clouds formed unnaturally over Earth's equator, swirling with static, drawn by the immense Zulkar armada descending from orbit. Their ships blotted out the sun, casting half the planet into artificial night. Beneath that growing storm in the waters of the southern Pacific, the last human fleet prepared to make its final stand. On the bridge of the Helix Fury, Jalen Ryder stared at the tactical display. Countless red signatures flickered into view. The Zulkar weren't just attacking, they were unleashing everything. This wasn't a battle. It was extinction. Zyra stood beside him in full armor, her once glowing tattoos dimmed now, more subtle, beneath the black metal that curved over her skin like a second soul. Her eyes no longer held the cold confidence of a predator. Now, they burned with purpose. "They're bringing the vanguard," she said quietly. "Elite shock units. Mind-linked. To the central hive, no mercy, no second chances." Jalen turned to her. "Can you link with them?" She hesitated, then nodded. "But if I do, they'll feel me." All of me. And they'll know that you've changed, that I've betrayed them. In the bowels of the ship, engineers readied the final payload, an AI virus designed by Zira and the remaining Earth coders. It would corrupt the Zulkar command lattice from within, but it had to be uploaded physically. Someone had to bring it aboard their flagship and plug it directly into the nerve core. A suicide mission. Jalen volunteered. Zira refused. If you go, you'll die, she said, voice taut. So will you. Then we go together. He stared at her, heat rising behind his ribs. Why? Zira stepped close, her fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. Because I was made for war, and then you taught me what it means to fight for something more. What's that? He asked. You. The final battle began in fire and silence. The human fleet emerged from undersea caverns like leviathans, launching missiles through thermal vents to avoid detection. The Zulkar ships descended in response, hissing through the atmosphere like black comets. The sky lit up with plasma, burning debris raining into the ocean like molten tears. But this time, humanity didn't run. They tore into the Zulkar ranks with a fury born of extinction. Torpedoes, drones, magnetic mines. Fighters soared like wasps through the gaps in the enemy formation, targeting weak points Zira had helped them map. The Zulkar had strength, but humans had creativity, unpredictability, and rage. While the battle raged above, the Helix Fury and its escort squadron punched through the rear lines toward the flagship, a twisted, cathedral-like ship that pulsed with living machinery. It hovered over the Pacific, casting its shadow over the dead reefs below. Jalen and Zira boarded it together. Inside, the corridors pulsed with organic light. The walls breathed. Zulkar warriors moved in silence, heads turning at the scent of betrayal. Zira led the way, hacking into the hive link through her neural implant. Pain seared through her skull, but she endured it, muting her mind just enough to fool the sentries. They reached the core. The walls opened like a wound, revealing a throne of nerves and biowires. And sitting atop it, her sister. She was taller than Zira, broader, armored in red, and her eyes, once familiar, burned with hatred. You, she hissed. You defile our kind. I became more, Zira replied, calm but shaking. The sister rose slowly. You became weak. No, Jalen said, stepping forward. She became human. Before the sister could strike, Zira launched herself forward, locking claws with her bloodkin. The two titans crashed against the walls, growling, slashing. Jalen darted past them, racing to the core, plugging in the A-drive. The flagship screamed, not the systems, the ship itself, like a god in pain. Zira's sister broke free, rushing Jalen, but Zira tackled her midair, slamming her into the hive pillar. Claws tore, blood sprayed, and then Zira struck one final time, through her sister's chest. Silence. The virus worked instantly. Across the sky, Zulkar ships spasmed, their coordination shattered. Some fled, some imploded, some simply froze, drifting uselessly. On Earth, the resistance pushed forward, sweeping through the paralyzed enemy like fire through dry leaves. On the flagship, Jalen held Zira's bloody body as the hive core began to collapse. You did it, he whispered. Her lips were pale. You always smelled like chaos. He laughed, choking on it. Stay with me. I told you, she said faintly. This isn't love. Yes, it is. She smiled then. Slow. Real. Then burn with me. They didn't die. Helix Fury recovered their signal at the last second, dragging them out as the flagship exploded behind them. Zira's body was broken, but her fire still lived. So did his. Months passed. Earth rebuilt. The Zulkar retreated. Zira never returned to her people. She stayed on Earth, a relic of a failed invasion and a symbol of something greater. She never called herself human. But she never called herself Zulkar again. Jalen kept command, but he never left her side. They didn't get married. They didn't wear rings. But they held hands under foreign suns and whispered things meant only for each other. And sometimes, when the world was quiet, she would lean into him and say, "Your fire never stopped." And he would smile and reply, "Because you're still feeding it."